and welcome to the Public Interest. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us this week. This week's broadcast is designed to focus on internal and external threats to national security, and as you would know, the recent talk has been about Operation Dragnet, so we'll be focusing on that today. As always, it's my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Malika.
And welcome to today's journalist joining us, Ms. Zoisa Fraser from Stabroek News. Welcome, Zoisa. And Mr. Ravin Singh from the Guyana Chronicle. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, great to have you both. First off, Your Excellency, with all the talk about security in recent days, especially regarding Operation Dragnet, social commentators and even some local journalists to some extent seem to not be focusing too much on possible external threats that Guyana may have to prepare for. Are you confident that at this point in time we are capable enough to defend our territory in the event of external threats? This is even Venezuela side, sir.
Well, yes, Guyana has never forgotten or ignored the threat to its border, particularly from Suriname and Venezuela. And as you've seen quite recently, not only Operation Dragnet, but the Guyana Defense Force mounted a successful exercise Green Heart in the Bartica area, which demonstrated its capability to do just that. In October, the Venezuelan National Armed Forces had conducted some very provocative exercises in the, what we call Western Essequibo, and for them, it's Eastern Venezuela. They deployed rockets and armed rivercraft and increased their troops, and we were quite prepared. So I'm very, very satisfied that the Guyana Defense Forces is ready. It's demonstrated its preparedness. And during this period between 1st of December and 1st of June, they'll continue to be fully deployed.
Sir, even before I give the other journalists a chance, some may want to, well, I've heard sentiments, people are saying that Operation Dragnet may be a bit superior to the other operations that we would have seen before, especially under the previous administration. Your sentiments?
Well, I'm not comparing the performance of the security forces now with what happened under the previous administration. There's really no comparison. What the security forces have is a very clear mandate, because we have a series of events apart from the year-end expectation that there'll be some surge in crime. We're looking towards Mashramani next year. We're looking towards local government elections and to the 50th anniversary of independence celebration. So it's a period of heightened vigilance between 1st of December and 1st of June 2016. And the forces are clear about their individual mandates. You're not going to see Army and police driving around the city of Georgetown. The Army has its mandate, which is largely territorial, they're on the borders, and the police has its mandate, which is largely urban, but they also, as you know, recently sent horses into Rupununi, so they'll be mounted patrols. So the forces are doing what they're supposed to do, and they're under very clear instructions over this period between December and June next year.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now your turn. I'll begin with you, Zoisa. You're free to pose questions on today's topic, main topic, which is security, of course.
Good morning, Mr. President. There is a view that police reforms have not gone far enough in terms of rooting out corruption and extrajudicial tendencies in the force. What further steps would you want to propose?
Well, as you know, Presidential Advisor on Security Reform has been appointed, and we had a series of recommendations over the last 12 to 14 years, which have got to be gone through and implemented. I would agree with you that the reforms have not been fast enough, but many of the reforms deal with human behavior. They deal with the conduct and efficiency of the force, and that will take a bit long. It's not just a matter of providing more equipment or better barrack rooms. It will take a little bit longer to ensure that the efficiency and the integrity of the police force are maintained. But the reforms have started. The new minister, that is the Minister for Public Security, is at vice presidential level. We've set up something called the NANA, the National Anti-Narcotics Agency, and we are reforming the National Drug Strategy Master Plan, which we inherited from the previous administration, and Major General Michael Atlee has been put in charge of that. So reforms are taking place, apart from the improvement in training and administration of the Guyana Police Force. It is a bit early, but I expect that in the fullness of time, you'll see the effect of those reforms. I would say right now, more crimes are being prevented and detected than before. We cannot boast that we can prevent crimes from occurring, but you can see that the responsiveness of the police has been a deterrent, and also there will be more cases being brought before the courts. More people are being arrested.
You spoke about NANA and the master plan, but is there anything new that we can look forward to in the immediate future to deal with these two issues?
I would say that from the time of Mr. Jagdeo's presidency to the time of Mr. Ramatara's presidency, a period of maybe 14 years or so, we have had about 14 or more plans, recommendations. So we are not in the business of creating new plans, we're in the business of implementing the very plans which the previous administration failed to implement. The most important is the Security Sector Master Plan, which was signed by the British High Commissioner Fraser, I think about 7 years ago, and they never implemented it. And that was funded at the cost of over £3 million. I met the UK Prime Minister David Cameron in New York when he attended the United Nations General Assembly. He asked me what help could be given. I said, we want the Security Sector Master Plan back on the table. I met the British High Commissioner, Mr. Gregory Quinn. I said the same thing. So I'm confident that once agreement is reached, that master plan will be back on the table in 2016. And I'm sure that once it's implemented, it will have an impact on the crime situation. So at present, I do not see the need to have a new plan. We've got 14 years of planning, and this time the difference is that you have an administration which is going to implement the plans.
Ravin?
Okay, coming back now to the Operation Dragnet. Now, I don't think that there is a clear description of what the operation entails. What makes it different from any perhaps military or police operation? For the average man who would not know what features in the operation.
Okay, in the first instance, it is not an operation of the joint services. So you wouldn't see the army and police going around the city or the countryside. The army has specific responsibilities for territorial defense and coastal surveillance, and that's what the army is doing. The police have specific responsibilities for law enforcement, and that's what the police is doing. So what you're seeing in Dragnet is the specialized functioning of the various arms of the security sector. In particular, I would expect that focus will be paid on the possibility that terrorists could enter the country, and the Ministry of Citizenship is involved. So we want to protect our borders from terrorism. We would like to see that there's no threat of extremism, because we are operating in a transnational or an international situation of fear created by Boko Haram in Nigeria and Chad and Burkina Faso and other countries, Al-Shabaab in Kenya, ISIS, which was responsible for recent killings in Paris and possibly in California. So we're looking at counterterrorism, we're looking at law enforcement, we're looking at the suppression of gun running and cocaine trafficking, and we're looking at dealing with the normal day-to-day crimes, you know, stealing, burglary, armed robbery, and so on. So in a nutshell, there's several operations in one. There's a police law enforcement operation, there's a defense force border security operation, and there's a general, I would say, responsibility on the part of the government to make sure that our citizens are not exposed to transnational crime. And that's why places like the Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Citizenship are also involved in this operation.
We still have some more time to deal with security, so Zoisa, I'll come back to you.
Mr. President, moments ago you spoke about the aid from the British being possibly available next year. Can you say when we get that aid, where exactly will it be applied? Will it be spread between the Army and the police? Would more be going to the police? How would it be distributed?
Well, it won't be spread at all because there was a plan on the table, and that plan was called the Security Sector Reform Action Plan. We expect that that plan is going to be revised. It is largely a law enforcement plan. It is largely retraining the police and preparing it to overcome the problems of the early years of this millennium, if you can call it that, during the troubles on the East Coast and elsewhere, and preparing them for the future. So it's largely going to be a police reform plan.
Ravin?
All right, coming back to local security, in any way, are you concerned about the spate of killing by police of criminals and their apparent inability to apprehend these people, extract information, take them to trial? And in relation to that also, are public safety and due process mutually exclusive?
No, I don't think they're exclusive. In fact, my instructions would be to save life. It's important to not only suppress crime, but to identify and remove the causes of crime. And if criminals are killed, you can't find out what is their motivation and maybe who is backing them, you know. So I am very disappointed when in confrontations, persons who are accused of crimes or alleged to be criminals are killed. And I would like to see due process. I'd like to see persons arrested and brought before the courts. So we find out who is the mastermind. You know, is there a gang? Who are the gang leaders? Where are the guns coming from? If you kill them, you don't know these things. So I don't want to see more deaths. I want to see more arrests and more interrogation so that we can bring an end to these execution murders, to gun running, and other forms of criminal activity. It is apparent that that some gangs are re-emerging. It may just be small gangs of 2 or 3, but it's a danger. And I would always put the saving of human life above as a greater priority than just shooting down people. I don't like that at all. But in this case, or in the most recent case, it appears that the criminals were armed and there was a shootout. In fact, if I can add, we are reforming the rules for coroner's inquests. So there will be coroners appointed who do not necessarily have to be district magistrates. This would enable the state to ensure that all unnatural deaths are investigated. So even a case in which criminals or persons assumed to be criminals are shot, we will have inquests and there will be greater care exercised by the police authorities to ensure that the policemen don't act unlawfully.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency. We have to move on to our open segment. You're free to pose other questions to His Excellency. This is aside from the topic of security. I'll give you the choice.
All right, sure. All right. Perhaps one of the most talked about issue right now is the decriminalization or possibly the legalization of marijuana. We have heard calls being made of recent heightened calls. An AFC member of parliament, more specifically Mr. Michael Carrington, is expected to table a bill in the National Assembly, I think when parliament reconvenes. In light of that, and strides being made towards having marijuana decriminalized or legalized possibly, your arrangement with the DEA, how is it, can we facilitate an arrangement with the DEA, well, the US, through the DEA, when they still have marijuana at the federal level as being illegal? How happens between that?
It is a matter which has not fully been discussed at the cabinet. We were concerned with establishing a convention by which all bills will be brought before cabinet and discussed there, so that the parliamentarians in the coalition could be apprised of the position of the government. This has not happened as yet. So it is quite possible, there's nothing to prevent an independent member, as in this case, bringing his own bill. But as we are operating as one coalition, we would expect that that draft bill be brought to the cabinet first. I have asked, the matter has been raised at cabinet, and the Prime Minister, who is leader of the House, is going to take that in hand. In the second instance, we have already taken a position on smoking, and the Minister of Health, Minister of Public Health, is preparing some legislation which will deal with smoking. So it would be quite contradictory for us to bring legislation to prohibit smoking in public places and elsewhere, and encourage legislation or to bring legislation to encourage or to decriminalize smoking of another substance. So these are matters which are still to be discussed by the cabinet. I don't want to state a government position, but as far as I can see, maybe like you, it is contradictory to work towards banning smoking, which is known to be a cause of death, a leading cause of death worldwide, and decriminalize smoking at the same time. It's a contradiction. I don't know if that suits you, because in making an arrangement with DEA, we're inclined to ensure that our young people are protected from the effects of smoking altogether, smoking anything.
Zoisa.
When can Guyana expect a final word from the UN Secretary General in Guyana's request for a judicial settlement of the controversy with Venezuela?
Well, it's not in the short term. Not in the short term. As you know, the territorial controversy has been going on for over 50 years. I was very impressed with the attitude of the President of the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. He is fully engaged, and he sent his own chef de cabinet, his chief of staff, down to Georgetown on 2 occasions. But after the Argentine elections, she was given an appointment within the Argentine government, so he's had to appoint a new person. That may have delayed the process, but he is fully engaged, and I'm confident that he will be able, within maybe half a year or so, to identify the process. He is not going to resolve the problem, but he has to identify the process which presumably would lead to a solution. And in this regard, he must, because of his role as United Nations Secretary General, he must try to secure the compliance of the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So I wouldn't hold my breath. You know, the Secretary General demits office in about a year's time, and I expect that towards the next General Assembly, or towards the last quarter of next year, we would be in a better position. We would know where we're heading. But he's doing his best, but the process is not a swift one.
Okay, is it a case where we're having a thorough investigation, or there was probably a misconception that there was indeed corruption on the PPP?
Well, once a party is in the opposition, it does not have access to the files. It can make accusations, which we made, based on perception. But once you intend to approach the court, you have to have hard evidence. And over the last 6 months, we have been conducting investigations, inquiries, and we've been attempting to get the type of evidence to demonstrate to the public, and of course to the courts, that crimes have actually been committed. But it is a painstaking effort, and it's an ongoing effort as well. But we haven't taken our hand from the till, so to speak. We're still working on accumulating evidence.
Will the discipline services be paid a bonus this year?
All of the public servants will receive some benefit from the government.
You're allowed a follow-up. I'm assuming you have one. If not, Ravin, you're free to go again.
Plans for investment. We know there's a link between unemployment and the crime situation. Youth's employment. What plans does the government have to provide opportunities or investment which will provide opportunities for employment in Guyana?
We must always assume there's a link between the two. There's a causal link, you know, because people may jump to the conclusion that unemployed people are criminals.
Possible link.
Necessarily. We are concerned about the employment situation. A lot of young people come out of school and can't find jobs. But again, as in everything in the world, you have to look at causes. Many of them can't find jobs because they might have dropped out of school, they might be underqualified, and you're quite right, the economy might not be generating sufficient jobs. Yesterday I was at Linden. We are looking at something called a Linden Action Plan, which includes the LEN, the Linden Enterprise Network. It is a good model, and I would like to feel that every one of our 10 regions could have some form of regional enterprise network which provides microcredit to young entrepreneurs and to women and other people. You don't have to be young. The whole idea is that people must be weaned away from their addiction to wage labor. People must be encouraged to undertake private enterprise, private projects, and we are prepared, once those projects are viable and once the creditworthiness of the applicants could be ascertained, to help persons to set up their businesses, and that's what the LEN is doing. And I would like to see this happening in all of the regions. We need more entrepreneurs. We need people who don't depend on coming to government. It's not a handout. It is going to be a loan. It's not a grant. It's going to be money which which is extended to them, which you'll have to pay back. So we are looking at this model, which was launched yesterday in Linden. And I do believe it is a model that can be used in other areas which will assist employment. Now, to start with, young people have to stay in school to be qualified, to be fully literate and numerate when they leave. Two, they have to be innovative. We can't just depend on copying or going into jobs and hoping to become clerks. Those jobs are now disappearing. What we want to see people going into agro-processing and manufacturing, maybe at a low level, but providing goods to the market. What we want to see people exploiting the opportunities for information technology, looking for new markets, looking for new products, you know, which Guyanese people need. And we feel that the field is wide open for young people to come out of school and gain that sort of employment. So LEN is the model, and I expect that employment in due course, if it is adopted, if that model is adopted by young people, will go a far way to reducing or removing unemployment. If people still come out of school with the mentality that somebody owes them a walk, you know, we're not going to move ahead. So we have to, a lot of people are addicted to wage labor. They simply want to go to an enterprise and work for 6 days a week and get a salary, a wage, and that's it. It's not going to work anymore. We need more entrepreneurs.
Okay. All right. We still have some more time. We have about 5 minutes or so left, so you're free to ask other questions.
Mr. President, I would like to ask you about sugar. Following the Sugar Commission of Inquiry report and cabinet retreat, will your government now move to privatize sugar estates? And in relation to the Skeldon factory, what are the plans given their severe problems over the year?
Well, there are two heavy questions, and I don't want to preempt what the cabinet is going to do. We still have to have a retreat. Unfortunately, because of a series of international meetings culminating in the meeting now in Paris, several important ministers, Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Governance are out of the country. And a retreat is planned in which these very matters will be discussed. There has to be change in the sugar industry, But it is very important in terms of employment, in terms of the linkages with other products, for example, molasses and rum, and in terms of the whole structure of our economy. I don't think we can do without sugar. So it is not an easy decision that we can't just shut down the entire industry. And I don't think that is something that is going to happen. As far as Skeldon is concerned, again, this is a matter that has to be investigated. Mistakes were obviously made in the last administration. We have to determine now whether those mistakes are corrigible, whether they can be remedied. And the previous administration has engaged experts from around the world to examine the factory. And all I can say is that one is hinged on the other. Once we decide that we are going to maintain the sugar industry, or maintain a part of the sugar industry, or privatize a part, maybe the field part could be privatized to individual farmers. I don't want to predict what's going to happen. But once we decide to have a sugar industry, we'll have to fix Skeldon and ensure that it can fulfill the needs for the private farmers who can bring their canes to that important factory. As you know, over the years, there's been a gradual shift eastward of sugar production from Essequibo to Demerara, from Demerara to East Berbice Quarantine. So that drift is continuing to take place, but we want to make sure that at the same time we cut down the huge subventions we've had to pay to the sugar industry, we maintain employment, and we produce sugar at an economic cost which could be sold in the world market.
I think it was 2 weeks back, former President Barjaglia would have said the government has no position when it comes to climate change. What is the government's position on climate change?
Well, the government has a more holistic position. This administration has a more holistic position than the previous administration. What I said publicly is that we are not only concerned with LCDS in a narrow sense, we're concerned with other dimensions. For example, coastal zone management, which the previous administration hardly spoke about, which is perhaps one of the most expensive aspects of climate change because of rising sea levels. We're also concerned about converting to a green economy, and I don't think any serious person who's examined what this administration has been doing over the last 6 months could accuse us of not being concerned about that. We are making strides in terms of getting engagements on wind generation of electricity, solar generation of electricity, and we're looking at the possibility of hydropower, not only at the Mila, there are other sites that can be used with smaller projects. So we are making progress in a holistic way, because climate change is forever. It's not going to go away. It's not something happening 1 year and will go away the next year. We realize that it is forever, and we are making a total change. For example, banning of styrofoam products is one of the steps we're taking, because many of our canals and some of our rivers have been affected by styrofoam. So we have a more holistic view: coastal zone management, energy generation, sanitation in terms of solid waste, and cleaning up the city of Georgetown. All that is part of the holistic approach which the previous administration never bothered with. They made a mess of Georgetown, for example. And everybody is pleased now that even the few showers that we had last week are draining off much more quickly. And we hope that during this season, we will have less flooding because we have cleaner drains and cleaner parapets, and there's better solid waste management. All of these form a part of the package of preparation that this administration is making to deal with climate change. Not just LCDS, but it's a whole package.
Zoisa, the final question will come from you today.
Mr. President, will the government take a decision to rescind the Memorandum of Understanding with Fedders Lloyd for the specialty hospital and go to a new tendering process?
I do not see that there is justification or need for that at the present time. The Minister of Finance has examined it and made a presentation to the board. And we, so far, are prepared to follow the advice of the Minister of Finance on this matter. That is as much as I can say at this point in time.
And on that note, thank you very much, Your Excellency, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Thank you very much to you, Zoisa, and thank you, Zoisa, of course, of Stabroek News, and Ravin of the Guyana Chronicle. This has been another edition of The Public Interest. I'm Malika Ramsey. Thanks for watching.